Welcome to the Reds Reviews podcast, brought to you by PayperHead.com. Right now there is a promo for $3 for up to 3 months, and that is a premium promo. It does include everything on the plate, and it's about that time, so let's get on with the Red Show. Well, what's going on, guys? How are you? This is Red, just coming through for the week. Let's recap. So the Lakers are your 2020 NBA champions. That is amazing. It's not that it wasn't that unpredicted. It's not like a lot of people are surprised necessarily. I mean, Miami did get a little bit of a run there. They did win a game and force a game 6, which is good. You know, it's good for the competition. It's good for the storyline and everything else. And I've seen a lot of the posts and information coming out about it that Anthony Davis is going to actually continue to stay at the Lakers, so we might see a repeat next season, depending upon how well or how healthy they can stay. LeBron quote says, "I have a lot of games left in me," and so we're probably looking at maybe a two-peat or a three-peat. I don't know. It's just one of those things. I mean, if you look at the NBA ratings overall, and you talk about it without looking at some of the hype that went around the last finals game, because there was a little bit of a pickup in the ratings as far as viewership goes. But overall, the actual viewership for NBA in general went down 70%. So, you know, I mean, as far as the culture goes and the social justice and the BLM movement and everything else that these players were talking about during their interviews and their post-game interviews and any of that stuff, it's definitely, you know, it was a good platform for them, and I'm glad that they ended up playing the season out this year. I'm glad that there was NBA games for my players to wager on more than anything else, and that's where it'll stay at. I'm not going to read into it any more than that, because it's not my place necessarily to make judgment on how these guys want to present themselves to the public or any of those things. But one thing I did find interesting about the entire thing that ended up happening throughout the bubble is that when Milwaukee decided to walk out of their Game 5 in the first round or second round, I forget which one it was, of the playoffs, the change in I guess voice or stance in the idea of boycotting games rapidly deceased. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because it wasn't, the optics were wrong on it and people were looking at it like, look, if these people are going to boycott, then we will too. I don't know. And so they ended up just going through the process and actually finishing out the season. There were no more protests. There hasn't been any more, you know, recent like outrageous shootings or anything that have to do with that. And also I've noticed a steep drop off in the mention of a couple of the people, like the George Floyd, which is fine because he was relatively an innocent person, but the other guy that the Milwaukee game was protested about, you know, a lot of information surfaced about that guy, about him being somebody that was an assault, and you know, they had actually called the cops on him. He had resisted arrest, yada yada yada, and he lived. So there was that whole bit that didn't end up fitting, I guess, the narrative or whatever it may have been. I don't know. Again, it's not my thing. I'm just more concerned about what's on the sheets and what my players are doing and what's available for us to wager on. I have, you know, been watching the way that they've been managing the NFL situations, and I'll switch gears on that to talk about that. So these postponed games or moved games, a lot of them aren't even considered necessarily postponed for an entire week. They're just moved a day or two based on the positive tests on certain players, or because an entire team staff may have shown up. I guess the Tennessee Titans, their staff members had it, and it wasn't so much as many players as it was the staff. So, you know, it's interesting to see how this is all kind of changed the approach to planning out a game or a wager or anything like that. Because before I was on this side of the fence, where I was actually taking, you know, a little bit of action here and there, I was just a general player as well, you know, and I used to look at my games coming up for the weekend, and I would think about the ways that certain players might play. You know, like if you look at the old Brady stats, okay, so like when December starts rolling around or November and the snow starts showing up, Brady was an actual monster when it comes to being in the snow versus other teams like the West Coast teams that could be traveling to that side of the East Coast, for a game. And I used to wager heavily on that just because of it. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't even matter what the line was in a lot of cases. I would wager on it just because. And so, like, when I look at this and I see these games that are coming up now, when they can, be postponed at the drop of a hat or whatever, it does actually kind of help me along the lines of studying for my sharper guys, which I do have some in the NFL that are relatively sharp. I mentioned before the teasers, and that's something that I've obviously limited, and parlays I've obviously limited, to try and make sure that they still have the option to play these things. I'm not going to take that away from them, out of fear that I'm going to get racked on it. But it's really just important to at least protect some of the bankroll that's going into it. Like right now, the baseball, I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it being not so much on the main highlight of the board right now. Mostly because a lot of the pitching matchups and things that you would normally see are just it's favorites right now. There's a lot of favorites that are winning these games. It's very easily understood as that goes. I mean, like you look at the Braves and the Dodgers, the way that those first two games shook out. I guess it was a close 8-7 on one of the games, but you go to the next game, it was like, what did they score? 12-2 was the final on that. 12-4. I forget what the total was on that, but the Dodgers came out and had a 11 hit first inning. And if you're a regular Joe bettor and you see that game, or they've already gone down 0-2 and they're going into the third game, it's a must-win situation for them. They've got to come back, and they do it, and they make a statement like that. It's like, okay, that was easy money for a regular bettor. And so, again, it's just I'm not saying that I'm not glad that there's there's baseball on the board for my players, and I'm not saying that it's something that I'm ever going to take away from them, but I might change the limits on those things just for this time frame, because this season's a little weird. It has been a little bit weird as far as the actual gameplay has gone. Home runs are always happening in almost every single game, and they're walk-off home runs. It's been one of the highlights that I've seen on every ESPN and CBS Sports and whatever else, the bat flips, the walk-offs, and all these different things. And I get it. It's to help with the marketing because their viewership and everything else has been going down as well. And I've read two things on reasons for that. The MLB obviously is obviously struggled before going into this as far as entertainment value goes for the newer generations. But secondly, it has to do with they've said that they're cramming a lot of different sports in these sections, and for us it means good stuff because there's a lot of lines, a lot of stuff to wager on. So whatever floats your players' boats, they do have the ability to play that stuff. But again, my hope is that these next couple of months will be very telling on how I guess the next season shake up, right? Because if you look at it in perspective, we're supposed to be heading right into it, and again, as I mentioned before, the teams that were in the playoffs right now for the NBA that just finished, they're probably going to be the same good teams that are going into this next season because it starts real soon. I don't know what they're planning on the bubble. If they're going to try and do a bubble again, I doubt it. I think that as the coronavirus and COVID pandemic ends up slowing down or playing out based on actual percentages that are being released and whatever else, I think that I know that there was some smart calls, and I'll talk a bit about the college football, for example. You look at the Alabamas, and you look at the SEC in general, or any of the schools and I guess divisions that decided to continue to play regardless of what was coming out of Fauci, right? Because that's the one that moderates the United States. If you look internationally, you got the WHO, and they're saying do this or do that, and they just released this last week that they do not approve of lockdowns in general because there's other things, other factors, higher risk factors than just what's been going on as far as the actual death rate from coronavirus itself. So smart calls on just continuing the season as best they could with the restrictions that they've had to follow based on whatever came out of the U.S. CDC and any of those interfering things. And so for the future and how this plays out, we will see. We will see how that goes. I think in general, as far as the presidential election goes right now, the Biden race and the numbers that are coming out of the polls, obviously the liberal media has them winning, and the conservative media or the right side has Trump winning. And it's really kind of a toss-up as far as it comes across right now in the votes. And, I do have a lot of players that are wagering on Trump. I have a lot of players that are wagering on Biden, depending upon that. And I think that most of these people just bet with their heart because that's where they want it to go. That's what they want to see. So again, for me, my sheet has been I've been making a lot of money on casino. I've been making a lot of money on the live dealer that they just released. Is actually, it's better looking overall. Even with the amount of players that I do have right now, because it has increased quite a bit from the last year, just because I took on a couple of guys that I wasn't anticipating because whatever. And I mentioned the APS in that sense where I was able to take these guys on without really having to meet them in person. I don't trust every single person I meet. And it's been a benefit to me because it kept me for years in a safe place. So again, it's looking forward to what comes out of November. I think, obviously Kansas City is cranking. And Alabama, and what I wish more than anything though it was a regular college football season. I love watching the college football during the holidays. It's always been one of the things that I love to watch, and it's unfortunate that we're missing some of the divisions, right? So anyway, I will leave it with a couple of things. There is a couple of suggestions that I am going to make as far as the final part of this. Limit your baseball parlays. Do not allow these things to get out of hand quickly because they can. Do something about the way that you're letting the football teasers become a thing, right? Less than 7-point teasers or the 13-point teasers are obviously something that you want to keep real low if you can, because a lot of these games are pretty easy to pick right now. The bad teams are bad and the good teams are good, and that's always the easiest to predict for these guys. When the snow starts falling, but now that Brady's in Tampa Bay, I doubt that it'll be an issue. But hey, again, hopefully you guys have a great week. I'm going to be coming back next week talking about some of the stuff more in depth. I have got some information regarding a new premium digital casino that will be added. So for my table game guys, the guys that like that, they're going to have some new content to look at, which is, in this industry, it's at least in the casino industry, it's a very important thing to be able to have new, fresh stuff. So yeah, hope you guys are doing well. The odds are always in your favor, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning into the Reds podcast, brought to you by PayperHead.com. For all relative promos going on right now, please check them out at PayperHead.com. Also, opinions expressed on this show are not that of PayperHead.com. And if you do like what you hear, for all the agent news coming up, please like, subscribe, and follow. We will see you next week.